Hello, Peter. What the
Hi,
introduction,
how are
man.
you?
Crazy,
Thank
like
you.
amazing. It's like you did so much. Do you
Thank you.
even acknowledge yourself how much you did?
Every day I look in the mirror, I say, "Oh my gosh, how blessed am I?" No, I'm just kidding. I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
Sometimes I always look at what's still to be done. Where I've come from, and like it says, to much that's to those who much is given, there's much expected. So I sometimes hold myself to that. But I think since I left the ARE, it's been a different phase for me. I've slowed down, kind of doing more contemplation and more planful activities about being more clear about setting my own mission. Working for another organization, they have their own mission, and you try to fit in with it. But it's been a journey, just in this year being away, and just starting to be my own boss, create for myself. It's exciting and challenging, scary, all those
Oh,
things.
Yeah.
it's never ending awakening, right?
Oh gosh, no, we're always learning more, or we should always think we are, or have that mindset.
Well, I mean, I have so much to ask you. I feel like we really should have planned this out for maybe multiple shows, and maybe it will turn into that because you have a really interesting past, and I see you on social media. You're very active, you're vocal, and the bottom line is it seems like you care about people. Like it really seems like this is you're looking out for people, and I think we need the planet in general needs more people like that. So I acknowledge you for
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
And so Edgar Cayce. So let's start there, right?
Sure.
When now we're going back over 25 years ago, when I first discovered who Edgar Cayce was. So this is before I knew really anything about spirituality besides the religion that I was raised in. Um, and I got his books and I started reading, and I was like, this is fascinating. And fast forward to 2001 after 9/11. So I lost my girlfriend in the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Oh,
And
so
as a
sorry to hear that.
result, thank you. And as a result of that, I suffered from anxiety and depression and like a slew of health problems. And I
Yeah.
went from doctor to doctor trying to figure out what was wrong and going to specialists and getting tons of tests done. And they would diagnose me with something, put me on something, and then like a few weeks later, everything would be back to how I felt before that, right? So I felt like I couldn't get the answers from allopathic medicine, and I longed for like an Edgar Cayce. I was like, where, because obviously he was long past since, this was 2001, 2002, and I was looking in some magazine in the city one day in New York, and I saw a guy that said he was doing Edgar Cayce style readings, and I was like, "This is what I need." So I called up this guy, and he's this nice guy, and he had an office in the city. He told me about the kind of work that he did, and I ended up going in to meet him, and I had an incredible session with him. It was completely life changing, and
Oh
I
wow.
had I had insight about my life that I was not aware of, and I also had resolutions to my problems that I couldn't see on my own. And a lot of that, I talk about in the book that I wrote and in the conversations that I have, which is
Yeah.
basically that I was suffering from extreme emotional, like the post traumatic stress from losing Lynn, and then also the guilt that I experienced from trying to move on after she
Mm-hmm.
passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were very, I guess, tangible things that I could do to fix those issues, and I did, and I healed myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I continued to work with this man for probably 15 years. I saw him like 2 or 3 times a year, and I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where it's going to get interesting, right? Because now there's like this. By the way, he's passed now, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot from him personally, and then also the message that I got when he was in trance.
Mm-hmm.
But now it seems like wherever I turn, somebody is an Edgar Cayce channel, like supposed Edgar Cayce style channel, and or just channeling in general, right? So I wanted to start the conversation with your input on the value of the work that we've gotten from Edgar Cayce, right? And
Yeah.
how helpful that is in our lives, and then what your personal, I guess, reaction is to what seems to be, in my perspective at least, this plethora of channeled stuff, which is seems to be everywhere right now.
Yeah, great place to start. Um, I think that we talk about the new age that we're in, and then it means that we're coming out of an old age. So there's something new happening now. And so
Mhm.
I've thought about, well, what was the old age? And I think the old age was kind of a time where most people were more shut off. And so, like, let's say you talking about Jesus. So people had to go to Jesus to experience a healing. So he had to do the heavy lifting for them. And so there
Mhm.
was really kind of a passive relationship to healing. And then Edgar Cayce came along, not to compare Jesus with, Edgar Cayce with Jesus, but
Mhm.
Cayce comes along and he doesn't really heal people, but he gives them prescriptions for them to follow to do the healing. But still there's an element that's outside of the person. And so I
Mhm.
define the old age as that was the time where the healer was outside of the individual. And if you look at Jesus's teachings and Edgar Cayce's teachings, they both said you can do what I do, and you can do it even better coming in the coming times. And so
Mm.
the work that I do with hypnosis isn't so much to introduce people to Edgar Cayce, but it's to introduce them to the pathway that Edgar Cayce used to gain the information that he did, the pathway that Jesus used. So when people are channeling Edgar Cayce, to me that's like they're halfway there. They're using kind of new age techniques, but still in an old age mindset. To me, it's
Mm.
much more interesting to liberate people. And I think the true message of Jesus and the true message of Jesus is it's within you. Like, don't use me as the telephone. Get access directly yourself.
Yeah, that was.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that's what it didn't start that way for me. It's like I started doing past life regressions and I started getting them myself and doing them. And there was a time there where I wondered if it was that important. Is it just entertaining for people? But then I was kind of synchronistically guided to reading about and learning about the Book of Revelation. And in chapter 11, the hero of the story of this myth or whatever you want to, this dream is John, John the Beloved, and he encounters the twins. And Cayce interprets the twins. He says those are the two elements that every person on their spiritual path has to address that is beyond this life, that you have influences before you came into this world. And the twins were your astrology and your past lives. So it helped me to feel that, okay, the work that I'm doing with hypnosis, introducing people to their soul consciousness is important. It's really part of, I think, moving folks into the new age consciousness of having so many resources within themselves that they can slowly learn to get less dependent on things outside of themselves. I mean, as a psychotherapist, that's where I started. My parents were psychiatrists, and I love doing psychotherapy. Coaching is very similar, but there's a dependency that's gets created. People start to get dependent. It's a great business model because I would see clients once a week for like the rest of their lives. They start to connect, they're healing with my presence. But with
Mhm.
hypnosis work, they don't. That gets connected to their inner self. And I use a lot of post hypnotic suggestions for people to keep doing that. So I look at it as really liberating work. Like I feel that people come in to see me and I introduce them to aspects of themselves that they didn't know about. And usually, oftentimes, they get fascinated and they want to keep that going. So I think they get liberated in that finding that within their own house is a treasure trove, that the things they've been looking for in the neighborhood are actually right in their own basement. So
Mm.
that's the kind of in a nutshell how I would describe the work I try to do.
So what does that look like for somebody that comes to you for the first time? Their friend told them, you need to meet Peter, you need to have a past life regression. It was life-changing, and then somebody comes into your
Yeah.
office, they have no idea what to expect. What does that
Well,
look like?
the better known you get, like hypnosis works with suggestibility and
Hmm.
expectancy effects. So the more I'm hyped, the more hypnosis works. So
Mm.
it's like, now that a friend will say, oh my God, he's the best thing ever. So they're coming in already amped for that. And so it just
Right.
facilitates that. Like I know that that's not me. It's like when Jesus said, it's your faith that's made you well. I realized that if a person comes in with that degree of hope and faith, really good things will happen. Usually I have a recording that like an interview I gave that kind of goes into the work that I do. So it's I started off doing just past life regressions, and now I call it soul contact because people have a lot more different experiences than just past lives. The most common experience is usually contact with what I call guides. Kind of before we're born, we have a group of souls, and sometimes not all kinds of entities that are there to help us. And folks oftentimes come into contact with that group, that the council, sometimes it's called, and they're profoundly influenced. They, it's like you realize you've never been alone, that you've always had love and support, and you gain an understanding of, whatever it is that your question is. You oftentimes get an understanding of that, like why you suffered in childhood, or why you're going through the challenges that you're going through now, or you're encouraged and introduced to talents and abilities that you're not currently using, but that you have. Sometimes I think of it like I I was a Catholic growing up, and so the Bible is kind of like Edgar Cayce. I have it in my brain, and sometimes I relate it to things that are happening metaphysically. Like one thing Jesus said is that we all have to be born again to reach the kingdom of heaven or to reach God. And what I find is that when there's a person comes in for a session, they go into trance, they access soul consciousness, and they don't come back the same person. They're profoundly changed by the experience. And it takes them a while sometimes to to orient to these changes that have happened. Sometimes I think of it like right now, all of us are in an ice tray. Where we've been frozen, like the physical world. You have your body and your way of thinking, and it's just kind of what you think of as yourself. But in trance, you move into water, the mind, and then you move into spirit, steam. And as you come back, oftentimes you'll come back into a different ice tray. You come back, I say it's almost like you're born again, like that. You've done spiritual work that you incarnated here to do quicker. It's almost like the person that at 9 a.m. had a certain karma and things they had to learn that it might have taken them a whole lifetime to learn. But by the time they come back at 11, some of that download and that work and that learning has been facilitated. So I think in the old age, people used to have to die to learn and then reincarnate. But I think one of the gifts of this new age is that people, while you're in the body, you can do the same process that you used to have to die to do. You used to have to die to meet with your guides and get an assessment of where you're at, and then come back in a next life. Now you can do that while you're in the physical body. So I say sometimes one of the benefits of the new age is that you can live multiple lifetimes in one life. Like I feel like I'm on my fifth life in this one life. Like I don't think I could even talk to the person I was 2 lifetimes or 2, previous incarnations in this carnation ago.
Oh, I relate to this so much. I felt like even had those experiences, like during the night, feeling the transformation within, right?
Mhm.
Just that body becomes like a stone, and just mind sort of is connected to whatever is happening, but you cannot even move,
Mhm.
and you feel all those transformations, and voice is telling that we will show you how we do, how
Mhm.
we put you on the new path down the way, like you are
Mhm.
like literally waking up as a new person in a
Mhm.
sense, right? So
Yeah.
it's but I wanted to go back a little bit to my experience in the past, because I was the boy who always kind of had that voice within as a child, as a growing up as a kid, and I was wondering and asking others, do you have that sense within that you already know what is good, what is bad for you? Do you have that
Mhm.
sense? And I was wandering around, and usually I got like those faces like, what do you talk about? What's wrong with you? And then I kind of didn't ask it anymore, but I always resonated in. And then when I first discovered the book, John Newton book, like past life, like about past lives, about those, he had I think 3 or 4 books about that, and I was like, and I'm coming from Latvia, and that
Mhm.
was the maybe those books arrived to Latvia much later than it was already in USA. So,
Mhm.
and for me, when I got this book, it's like, wow, that there is this, what I always felt.
Mhm.
Like there are those souls, those past life, whatever. And I was reading this book as my Bible. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you
Yeah.
so much, you know. And and this thank you so much is actually goes to you as well, because you've been doing those past life regressions. You know,
Mhm.
you've been giving that opportunity to people really to reconnect, to
Mhm.
really to know where they are coming from.
Mhm.
And this is like, this means so much for me, you know, and
Mhm.
it's so amazing. I did myself once as well, past life regression, but we can maybe leave it for later. But I just wanted to really say how important job you're doing, even though I
Thank
think
you.
sometimes we don't even recognize ourselves about that, right? You just, how, like, I'm interested, how did you even start to think that you want to go this path?
You know, Edgar Cayce said we pick our parents. And so I picked, you know, every parent's pair of parents are unusual. But mine were unusual in that they were both psychiatrists. My dad was a psychoanalyst. They were both Catholics, and they both were interested in metaphysics, in the unseen world. And so it was a rich place for me to grow up. And I was fascinated with the subconscious mind. I was fascinated with telepathy and not so much mediumship. My great grandmother was a medium, but so I had a place where I could talk to my parents about this, but they always emphasize education. So this stuff was sort of like a hobby while I got a day job, while I got a paying job. But I you know, eventually when I found out about Edgar Cayce fascinated me, not so much because it was anything I'd never heard before, but growing up Catholic, and I learned meditation. Learning about Eastern religions and reincarnation. I didn't find um, any system that connected these beliefs. And it was in
Mhm.
Edgar Cayce that he talked about a God of all people and Jesus and Buddha and reincarnation. So that became kind of my spiritual home. I joined they have these spiritual groups called Search for God groups. I joined that. And then I just got more and more interested in Cayce. I moved to Virginia Beach, became part of the organization. They taught past life regression there. I was the facilitator of conferences. So I went for 4 years. I went to every conference the ARE offered. So I went through that program 4 times. I got like an honorary degree because I had served, you know, snacks, you know, for each of those conferences. And then I started doing the work myself. And at first, you know, I have to say that there was a subconscious prompting towards it. It wasn't so much like my life has been largely led by opportunities. I mean, I have an ideal. I mean, I have a purpose. I want to help people, like Mark said. But how that plays out, I'm not always, you know, when I came to the ARE, I thought I was going to get involved in management. I didn't think I was going to become a front of house person, but that was the opportunity. So I made use of it. And then I can see how I've been guided and directed. So then when I started doing regressions, um, they were very powerful. They were very helpful to people. One thing I remember challenged me was that at the beginning, no matter how powerful they were, there was a part of me that didn't like doing them. And I said, "What's that? Why? You know, you're here to help people. Regressions are helping people. Why are you resisting it?" And I thought about it, and I said, "Oh, because when I do psychotherapy, my ego is present. I'm thinking, I'm guiding it. You know, when they thank me, I take, you know, like, yeah, that was me. But in
Mm.
regressions, I call myself a Sherpa. I just do a little, you know, breathe, close your eyes, you know, tell me what you're seeing. Oh my God, you know, Jesus is here. Okay, look at the time to come back. Like, I'm not responsible for what happens. Some, see, like I'll say when I teach, I'll say like, I can give you 10 stories that'll make you think I'm the best hypno regressionist in the world. But I can give you 10 that'll make you think like, why am I taking this guy's class? Because people are different. I always tell you can't get to attach the outcomes of your sessions because it's the people that are different. Your process is going to be the same, and some people will have, you know, tremendously profound experiences, and some people will have something less than that. So that to me was humbling, and in a way, you know, becoming humble is a good thing. So like when people praise this work, I feel like, well, you know, I facilitate processes. I'm not responsible for what happens in them. And so that, I think that's what kind of keeps me centered. There's no way my ego can get involved with this work. You know, like one of the things when I teach, you know, I used to teach and I would just give live demonstrations, and people thought, oh, this is impossible. Peter's like a gifted master. I could never do that. So I stopped teaching that way. I do one demonstration, and then you guys practice with each other. Another demonstration next day, you guys practice it. And then people start seeing that this isn't some kind of magic gift. This is something that is a natural process, that people reading scripts can facilitate people having deep transformative experiences. So that's been, when you talk about being proud, I think I'm proud of creating this course and how many people have learned how to do it and learned kind of how to believe in themselves. And I've put together structures where, you know, I have a supervision so that ongoing once a month people can come as a group and you know, talk about whatever challenging situations have come up in the process of doing regressions. So those are just some of my thoughts.
It's amazing answer, and I think what I really perceive from you is that all of us, we are those chosen ones by ourselves, right?
Yes.
So we
Yes.
actually have all the tools,
Yes.
or if we don't, we have a source where to find them and just start to apply to ourselves.
Yeah, like it says in scripture, many are called, but few are chosen. I think it's many are called, but few choose themselves. You know, few volunteer to step forward. I think we're all called, and it's sometimes our self-limiting beliefs get in the way of us answering that call. That's where I see that if somebody can step forward, you know, it's the I think God works with motion, and so when a person moves off the couch and initiates a process, they get a lot of assistance going forward. And certainly if somebody comes into my field and they're in motion, I'm going to work with that motion and try to guide them to places where they can gain the most or gain something powerful for themselves. Usually it's people, I think before it's kind of a spiritual awakening, people feel kind of lonely. Like they feel like, is this all there is? Is this all that I am? You know, I'm not much. But with a spiritual awakening experience, they come into an understanding that they're part of a group. Like I say that, like I'm a front man of a very good band. You know, I'm Mick Jagger and I got the Rolling Stones up in the etheric plane. And so it's like that, each one of us, you all are front men for a very powerful band of souls that want to express in this world through you. And once you learn that, it humbles you, but you also start to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's a powerful liberation, that you're part of something big. Again, part of something bigger than yourself. I don't know how else to say it.
So how do you differentiate with all that you just said, which makes a lot of sense to me? How do you differentiate taking ownership over your own life and taking action that you want to take as an individual versus I'm doing this because I'm being guided by spirit or that group or that band of
Yeah,
spirits?
I think though, I think when you have this connection to your guides, there's a sense of oneness. Like you realize that it's not like they're forcing you to do something. Like I always say that your guides work for you. You hired them. Like before you were born, you selected this group. Like with my guides, I've been a guide to them in other lifetimes when they've been on the earth. Like my guide council rotates. Some stay as guides, some come in. So they're working with me right now. But I think that's I don't get a sense. I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but I don't. Um, the subconscious promptings that I had about my life, kind of the purpose and meaning of it, it's stronger in the relationship with the guides. I realized that I set that up for them to help me achieve those goals as kind of the marching orders before my incarnation. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting from that is that there wouldn't really be like, oh, this is what you want me to do, but I want to do something different. It's almost like they would be in alignment, like there would be
Yes,
a coherence between your
yes.
choice and what you'd feel guided to do.
And oftentimes, you know, what's happening now with a lot of people is that, you know, even again, if you look at Revelation, you know, this is the time of the fall of the money lenders, and so people are starting to question the way that they make their living. So a lot of people are moving out of these corporate high-paying jobs because they're getting a sense that it just wasn't fulfilling them, and they want to move into something that's more fulfilling. And that's where the guides are. There isn't any guide group that is saying you've come to Earth to have power, you've come to Earth to make a lot of money. That's just ego-oriented, karma-producing challenges. So I think that when a person moves into their soul levels of consciousness, it's about values. And so I always say that it's the soul that planned your life, that your ego had nothing to do with planning of this life. That's why your ego is kind of frustrated and lost with how it confronts these challenges, because it's unconscious. It's in the soul level of planning, and the ego is like trying to run from it. So once your ego gets into touch with your soul level of planning, there's much more of a sense of purpose and meaning about what's happening in your life. You get to a feeling of less victimhood.
Yeah. I remember you said at the beginning of our conversation that you are, and I want to come more to this present moment right now and where we are right now. And you said that you're really practicing contemplation, which is something what I'm really drawn to as well. Because I just wanted to ask you, maybe give this explanation how you contemplate. What's the way of contemplation? Because I think it's everyone can understand this differently, but it's interesting to know your way.
I feel like all day long I'm getting emails, so to speak, and I have a feeling, oh, my inbox is getting kind of full, and then it's in meditation, or it's in dreams, where I start to read my email. I start to get into touch with it. But a lot of times with meditation, or it's like meditation could be so many different things. But sometimes I'll enter meditations where it's kind of more discussion in consciousness. Like I start to ask questions about what's coming for me, and what how to proceed with that, and timing, and things like that. Because sometimes on the soul level of consciousness, there's not a sense of time. And so sometimes they'll just say, it feels like you're like, they give you everything you have to do. And it feels like it's going to take me 12 years, and it's just, there's a sense of like, no time, just put it into place. But what I've come away with it from, just to me, it's more like not so much what I do, but about how I do it, and about planting seeds. Like the first stage of my work has been, you see, I think that whatever you want to call it, the Christ consciousness, I think in the old age, the Christ consciousness was manifested fully in individuals. And I think for the new age, we're trying to have that consciousness manifest in groups, the groups of people working together in that oneness consciousness. So I've seen part of my work is not just to teach folks, but like sometimes I think, like, if you have a dark highway and you're going to light it up, you put all the lights at a certain distance from each other to light the whole road. But what happens is, that's us. All of us have been placed on this road to lighten the area, but the lights get kind of lonely. Like, you need to recharge. And so I've looked at, I call it like, light reunions, getting groups of light workers together. I don't really like the word light workers, but folks together to recharge with each other. So I've really tried to not just teach, but establish community. So I'll teach these courses, and then there's after kind of groups that people can participate in, that's included in the price of whatever course they've signed up for. But it's really to just help people connect with other people, so that even on this conscious level, they're not feeling alone, because so much there's work that we can do individually, but then we go back to our homes and we fall back into our old self-limiting beliefs and our old acting and thinking. And so one of the things I always liked about the anonymous movement is that you'd get a sponsor, so that when you're about to relapse, you could call somebody who could help you through that. And I'm looking at almost like in our spiritual development, I want to create kind of not so much sponsors, but buddies, so that in in your families, in your workplace, which can feel dark and dry and heavy, you have a place where you can go and get support and get reminded and unload and connect. So that's the first phase of what I'm doing is trying to create community with the goal of trying to create this community as being a Christ conscious group of folks, as best as possible. We're all
Yeah.
perfectly imperfect.
And this is what we do, right? We contemplate all the time. We teach each other, just to looking at things from our own perspective, from own experiences, and trying to connect the dots, right? And it's so much more fun to connect the dots with like-minded people,
Yes,
right?
like the two of you have created an energy field working together that's much greater than if you were working individually. It's like there's an amplification with what you're doing. So I think that you've naturally responded to what I think is kind of a global soul prompting. Start to work in groups where two or more gather, something really even more special can happen than working individually.
Yeah, and every day I see the value in that because like I have my thoughts and my experiences and it's going through my head all the time. And Agris is having his thoughts and his experiences and everything's going through his head. And then we get together and we have a conversation about it. And sometimes we don't even know we're trying to put words to what's going on in our head. And then there's just so much value in us trying to make sense of it, like in an attempt to explain ourselves to each other. There's so much clarity and organization of our own thoughts, that come through. And then we almost like become more powerful in our own selves because we're not all over the place. We start to become very clear about what's important to us and what's okay and what's not okay. And
well, I can feel it. I can feel the energy field that you guys create is powerful. And the interview is enlightened. I can feel myself, the higher aspects of myself are being called forward because of the energy that you guys have created.
well, thank you.
I feel it too. I feel
Yeah.
that special bubble, I feel like we are really three of us just on that. I don't want to call it higher because humans just want to interpret something that something is higher, something is lower, but I call it just that soothing bubble, like whatever.
Well, maybe it's closer to the oneness.
Yeah,
than is usually
it's
experienced.
definitely like really centered within conversation. Actually, it's not going somewhere high. It actually really go really to the core, deep inside, and really to see what is meaningful right now, right here. So
yeah, and the whole thing is very fluid, like it really isn't like we not to say we struggle, but we have an opportunity to re-examine the mission of this podcast, of the conversation, of what we're trying to accomplish here, literally every single week, if not several times a week, because we understand what we're trying to accomplish, but sometimes you don't always know what that's going to look like, and it shifts, and also you're triggered along the way, right? Like, so certain things come up that like trigger a part of you and you're like, okay, well, I feel really passionate about that right now, like let's go there. And then it's so easy to get caught up in that, and then you're like, wait, is that what we're doing here? Or is this a crusade, like, or is this like we need to just take a deep breath and look at it from a different perspective? And that's interesting, and that's something that doesn't happen until we get into groups and have these kinds of conversations.
Right. Yeah, and the way I look at it is it's important to get lost. That I try to get lost. I guess I don't try to, but I'm comfortable with getting lost in a session, because I think when you're lost, it means you're fully present. Like you're not working off of some kind of script or some kind of map. You're just going with where this person is going and you have no idea where you are, but you have full confidence in spirit that it's going to work out okay.
Yeah.
This is such a great example, because I felt lately that, at least for me, and I think Mark too, we spoke about that their tendency for many people, it's not even in spirituality, in everywhere, to create confusion out of confusion. you know. But in order for us to get back to simplicity, right, is just to acknowledge it is what it is. That confusion, that's the beauty of everything. So then you can start to pay attention what is in front of you. Like this conversation for me is like really pay attention what is in front of me. So it's actually going back to that simplicity and see that, wow, it's so profound what is created out of this confusion.
Yeah, and it's safe to be confused, and it's safe to be lost, because sometimes the ego can want to grab to forms. The ego wants things to look a certain way. But I think that, it's like in scripture, it says when the person's in spirit, they don't know where they've come from or where they're going. There's a kind of, if you're safe in spirit, you can get lost and move in that space with a confidence that something good will come out of it. You'll end up somewhere, that you have all the skills and abilities and talents to move through this space or to follow. When I'm doing soul contact work, you first learn it as a script. And it's like, I feel like it's like going to the museum and you have a tour guide who takes you to each room in the museum. Some people like a tour like that. But the work that I do is more, we go to the museum and I just follow the person where they're intuitively, their spirit wants to move them. And I've learned that the person's soul consciousness is so much smarter than I am. And it knows exactly what they need. I don't know what they need, but if I follow that, the soul wisdom, and sometimes the soul wisdom takes people to really, really painful, scary, intense experiences. And I've learned that, the suggestion I make is that, behind this door is something really helpful for you. And if the person goes through the door and experiences something really painful and tragic, I know that that's what's most helpful for them. I have confidence in that. And they knock on wood, it's always worked out. It's always worked itself through that. But sometimes it's like, especially when I'm teaching and this happens, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm completely lost. I hope this goes okay. Maybe this is gonna be the one time that it doesn't go okay, but it goes fine. I can tell that's just my ego level of doubts coming in.
I think that is sort of the theme of my life. I think Agris and I are both really good at making those, everything you just described. That's basically how we've lived our life, which is why when we met, it was so exciting, because it was like, I did this crazy thing. He's like, I did this crazy thing, and I have this crazy thought, and I have that crazy thought. And so that's been helpful. But that idea of like, maybe this is the one time that like I really should have thought this through a little bit more, even though I'll stand in front of every room and encourage people to do exactly what you're talking about, to make the bad decision, to go off the path a little bit, to allow yourself to be confused a little bit.
Yeah.
That confusion is not such a bad place. Like, you're on the brink of clarity when you're
No, yeah,
confused.
I think that the greatest healings come in confusion, but that's where the difference between an early regressionist and a more experienced one is that the early one will kind of panic in the confusion and start grabbing for form. Whereas once you've had enough experience, that's why in the demonstrations, I try to show people places that are chaotic or random or might seem scary, and then how it works through. So they start to gain a confidence. And it's like learning to be a good sailor. You take a class, you learn how to sail, but you got to be out in the storms to really learn how to sail. And so that's why I provide the supervision to help people gain confidence and navigate those sort of things. And like Agris was saying, when I look at my legacy, like I don't have children myself, I'm an Aquarian, so I love the world. I have problems with individual people, but I love everybody, that kind of thing. And in teaching, I feel like, you alluded to it about how I care about people. I really do. I really connect and care with the people that connect with me on social media. I try to answer people. I try to be present with them. I try to, I don't know, just be human and connect. And I continue that with my students, and it gives me a good feeling. Like it feels aligned with what I'm here to do. Like trying to be an example of that Christ consciousness myself. And I fail miserably. I'm not saying that it's like I've got tons of work to do. I don't know how many lifetimes I've still got to live, but in some ways I can see that maybe everybody sees this. In some ways I can see that I'm aligned with that consciousness. And then, if I don't get enough sleep or something like that, I'm grouchy and I make messes.
Yeah. I really liked when you said that there are two ways of approaching things, and it's always two ways, right? It's our choice. So, and I like that you said like this example when you go to, for example, to museum, and you take a guide, and it says, and you have the manual, and you just, I know where I'm going to go. I know what I'm going to see, and all those things. And that side for me is like expectation side, which we can always apply to our lives, and doing certain things, expecting outcome. And most of the times we get frustrated because it's not museum where where everything is placed, right?
Right.
The life is not museum for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
So what is the other way of doing it? It's just let your natural curiosity lead your way into that museum or life, and explore and let it unfold in front of you with best intentions. Can we dive in this a little bit? I guess this is very interesting for me.
Yes, sure. I'd love to. As you were talking, I was thinking that from Edgar Cayce, what I learned is that being clear about what your purpose is in life, kind of your spiritual purpose, like it would be, I want to help people. I want to learn and grow, but I also want to be helpful to other people. And then what Casey said is that when you have door A and door B, which door is part of that purpose? Which door would help you in that path of being helpful to other people? Which one really wouldn't? Like if it's a door that'll take you down, I'll make a lot of money. This path will be kind of famous, but I'm not sure, this work would be exploitative of people. That's where your ideal would steer you to the other choice. So that several core important learnings that I had from Casey. So that's where, someone else said it's like love God and do as you please. I look at it the same way. Have an ideal and then just follow that. Let that ideal guide your choices. And you see, I think that if you do that, you'll accelerate your spiritual growth, and the karma that you're here to face, you'll work through much faster. Like Carl Jung, he advocated individuation, which is kind of like open every door, try everything out and see where it goes. That's fine. But if we've had enough lifetimes where we've lived that way, it's in my view, I want to accelerate my learning. Like I want this lifetime to maximize my spiritual growth. Like I've been in touch with, the door of sex, the door of addiction, I've had plenty of lifetimes. There's nothing more for me really to explore or learn from those paths, but to follow this particular path is interesting and what I want to do. But with that said, it's not that we're all here to learn all kinds of things. And in this life or past lives, we've all had to be great sinners and great saints to really be rich individuals. But I think the person has to check that with themselves. But I think most of us are here, have been almost everything. And we have the opportunity to choose door A, which is going to be the path that's going to accelerate our spiritual growth. And door A is good. Like it's joyful. It's I think I've always had a benefit in that helping other people makes me happy. Like I enjoy that. Some people don't have that blessing. Like there's just some folks that they're at a place of development where they sort of want the whole cake for themselves. Kind of the sharing a cake is less enjoyable to them than having it all for themselves. And I'm at a place in my development where I'd rather see everybody eat cake than have the cake myself. That kind of mentality. But that's just tuning into where you're at in your soul growth and development and what you're here to do. I don't think anybody can decide that for you.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're, especially with having read the Edgar Cayce, a lot of his work myself, I remember when I was first introduced to that concept of the ideal, I was like, well, what is that? And you know how long it took me just to sit down and figure out what my ideal was? Like, and then I was afraid that I was doing it wrong, so I had to like really try to understand if this is the one thing that I'm picking, I need to really make sure I get this right. Because I'm interested in a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
like I'm all over the place. So I need to know, and it's been sort of, it's changed along the way a little
Right.
bit. It's
Yeah.
not like, it really isn't complete. All of my choices look like an Agris. You can attest to this because you and I have talked about this. If you looked at my life, you'd say that guy, his life, he's all over the place. Like, what is his deal? But when you look at my ideal, that guided every single decision that I made.
Mhm.
So when we talk about people in general that go to gurus, spiritual teachers, channelers, psychics, mediums, all these things to get guidance, and to get advice because they're not sure what they should do. I think about when you have a clear understanding of your ideals, that becomes less necessary, like less relevant, like
Mhm.
it doesn't, like if somebody came to you and you were, let's just say you were Edgar Cayce, and you could go into trance and someone would come to you and say, should I take this job or should I not take this job? Well, it seems like the most important thing would be to understand what your ideal is. And then does either job, correlate to supporting that ideal?
Yeah.
And it would never be his place to say you should take that job.
Yeah. Mhm.
Although I see that all the time. So, when I hear your message, I think this is so incredibly powerful because that's what people need to focus on, is understanding what their ideal is. And then you'll always know what decision to
Right.
make. You'll never
Yeah.
need to rely.
And I think this pattern of helping people find the answers within themselves, that's liberating. If you tell them the answers, that's addicting. It's the opposite. That's why I'm not. But I was in that field a long time. I was in the field of being there with the answers, being the guru for people. And there's a temptation because people want that. People want to go to a guru. They love that. And then the guru that tells them the answers are within you, some people will try that out. Some people will go try to find a new guru. It's
Right.
like a new supply.
And this is so, if I think, and I know how I perceive people, and I worked in the industry where I actually guided talents and
Mhm.
still guiding. I know, like, with my perception and abilities to actually, for me, it would be so easy to manipulate with people
Mhm.
because I have those abilities. I have just natural gifts of doing this if I want to. But for me, always was that sort of understanding and inner voice telling, no, you don't use these abilities to trick, to manipulate, and to make some sort of addictions to people, right? It's just, I think it's very important message you are saying, that let's wake up, come back to ourselves, and you can go and ask for guidance, but never put that authority to your guide, because that's not even fair to that guide,
Right.
right? To give this how to say, not even significant, but actually
Authority.
you put authority, yes, but it's not even, I want to find the other word, because basically if you are putting that decision on someone else, think what kind of sort of karma or something you put on others, right? Because you literally ask someone to decide for you and take the responsibility.
Mhm.
So that other person actually is involved in that, being that person who takes a lot on. So
I'm not sure I caught what you meant. You're saying that
no,
if a person is giving authority, when you say guides, you mean on the other side?
yeah, the guide
So
who
they're giving.
actually who was like, who's like, okay, I will give him yes or no, right? And actually that guide himself taking responsibility for someone else and taking some sort of energy field on him to live on. And then you have to live with this, your answer, and probably solve yourself this kind of problems.
Yeah, and a spirit guide wouldn't do that. They wouldn't, like I'll give you an example. I was doing a private training with 2 students, and then I usually don't let myself be regressed by students, just so I can observe. But there were just 3 of us, so they co-regressed me, and I went into a deep level of trance, and I started like, I don't know what to call it, but I could answer questions. And one of the questions I had for myself was, for a long time I haven't written a book, and I've thought about writing a book, and the consciousness there was saying, write a book if you want to. You don't write a book, you don't write a book. It's part of your purpose here to write a book. You can do it, you'll feel really good about it. But if you don't, you might just have to reincarnate to do it. So it's up to you. Like that was the answer I got. It was like, there was no like, if you don't write a book, oh my God, you're a failure. It was like, it might help some people, probably be good for you. But it was so, I don't know how to describe it. It was so like, like when we look at the universe and we think we're the center of it, and we see like you are here, and it's this huge thing. There's so many things going on in the universe. You writing a book, okay, do it if you want to. If you don't, it's not gonna ruin the matrix. The matrix isn't
Right.
gonna shift. Like, so it was kind of humbling, but it was so much about personal choice. And but then there was like, one of the things I've learned, as much as I believe in reincarnation, we're going to have other lifetimes, but this is your only life as Agris, and this is your only life as Mark, and this is my only life as Peter. And it's like a snowflake, like a constellation that you have talents, Agris, and you have talents, Mark, and they're constellated in a way that will never happen again. You have opportunities with what you come in with, both of you, to express something. You can do it or you cannot, but in your next life, you're not going to be Agris, you're not going to be Mark, you're going to have a whole different constellation. And some of the things that are left will be part of that next incarnation, but some of the abilities and talents that you have now won't be there in the same sort of ways. So for me, it's like both. We only have one life as ourselves. We do reincarnate, but there's a kind of an importance to take to acknowledge that this is my one life is me, and you, me. It's a really special opportunity that'll never happen again. I don't mean to make it sound so dramatic.
No, I think you should make it sound dramatic because that really hits home for me. I mean, because we we know why we came here. We both know. Agris and I both know. I'm sure you do too, Peter. We do happen to know. We've done the work. We've searched. We had that inner knowing from an early age. Then we doubted it. Then we explored it. Then we realized, okay, we know what it is. But there are a lot of people that aren't sure. But there's times also where I feel like, whatever. If I don't get to any of this, then it seems like the world is just going to be just fine, especially when you get caught up in the whole, I'm here to change the world. I'm here to help people. I'm here to make the world a better place. And you're sitting across from people and you could literally bring them evidence to show them like the contrary of whatever their belief is, let's just say, because their belief is hindering them in some way. And you could bring them the contrary evidence and they're just like, they don't see it. Like, they absolutely will not see it. And then, you start to like kind of, it knocks the wind out of your sails a little bit. And you're like, well, if no one can even see what I see, like, then why bother half the time? Like, I mean, if none of this really matters, then why am I making such a big deal out of it? Right?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the human experience. It's just like Cayce would oftentimes say, you're in a body, we're in a body, and our bodies have their own mindset, their own consciousness, and it's sometimes different than, the spirit is eternal, the body's finite, and the body has its, wants to sleep, it gets tired, has all these, I think it's about trying to balance those things out. But I'll just add, it's like a from Edgar Cayce's perspective, he said the main kind of threat to humans or to our spiritual development, that he said this is the main threat to your spiritual development. And you think it's going to be like temptation, it's going to be sin, or whatever you might think of. And he said it's complacency. He says
Mm,
once a person gets, nice place to live, Netflix, it's like that can take over. Like I think about when I was coming up and I was struggling, I didn't have a car, I was riding a bike everywhere. There was a degree of urgency like that now is like lessened. In some ways I can do more in less time, but sometimes I think, well, gosh, what would it be like if I had that urgency now that I don't quite have? So I think we're all, there's certain individuals, like Casey said, if you sojourn in Arcturus, those are the folks that come in with urgency. Like they just have that urgency their whole life. Like Edgar Cayce
mhm.
had been there. That we all know somebody that gets up at 4 a.m. and does more between 4 and 9 than we do like in a month. There's always that kind of person that we compare ourselves to them and we feel, like, oh gosh, I've never run an ultra marathon or something like that. But so I think we just, being aware of that, but not using it as anything to shame ourselves or beat ourselves up about, just to come into, I was just contemplating today, each life that we have is like a day in the life of our souls. And so, this day, like I was thinking today, what time of day am I in? If I'm going to go to sleep at 11, I'd say I'm probably about 6 o'clock, about 6 p.m. in my day of this life. I've kind of, and I love dusk. I'm thinking, okay, great. I'm at the dusk time of my life. There's so many cool things that I like to do at dusk. So that way of thinking is motivating me. But it's also kind of think like, um, being, this day, doing what we can, kind of making sure that we're balanced, finding joy, being happy. You know, like Casey also said, it's 8 hours for work, 8 hours for sleep, and 8 hours for recreation, and try to keep that balance. It's not like not 16 hours for work and squeezing in the rest. And I think that if we keep a certain balance, we can be much more spiritually productive.
Yeah, it's like I always see the examples in nature, like when you go out of your house or whatever, and I live in beautiful California, and I see like beautiful mountains all around, and I'm in that valley in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and usually that's like, oh, it's such a place to dream, right? It's such a place to dream and say, like Mark said, I'm here to help, to spread the message, and to take care of people, for example. And then you're like, and then you look out there all the time and everything is so beautiful, but the thing is that you have to start from here, from this place,
Mm-hmm.
to walk towards those
Mm-hmm.
mountains, to
Mm-hmm.
look towards those beautiful things, and right here and right now is take care of first yourself, and then the closest ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your family, friends, whoever is the most closest by you. And sometimes you run, help everyone out there, but forgot about this place where we are right now. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is what I perceive from you. That's where the life starts every day. Live your life like this one beautiful day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I try to start my day with meditation, and it's like the beautiful image behind you. It's like I see myself in a cosmic kind of consciousness, and just being with awe. And then as I come out of meditation, I go into, like that one little part of that whole. I think that when we were created as souls, we're given aspects of creator or creation, and I think that in that in in our soul consciousness, we have the ability to be one with all. And then we also have the ability to understand that we're a cell in the body of all. So it's like we're a no cell, but we can also contemplate and be aware of being a body. We can bump between the two. And I think what's happened here on Earth is that we can be very aware of us being the nose cell, but not so easy to come into being part of the body. And that's why I think Buddha emphasized meditation so much, because it's like you know, coming into earth, we get alone because we feel ourselves separate and isolated. But then in a meditative consciousness, you can move into your consciousness of all, and then you can bump back and forth between the two. And I think that's what gives you a kind of it's like bringing the infinite into the finite. Because if you're just the nose cell is going to die, and you're going to get anxious and depressed and fearful, and you're not going to live a life of ideals necessarily, or as much as if you think you're finite. But if you can bring, like, I'm an eternal soul, there's much less anxiety, much less fear, and you can make choices that are broader, not just about self-preservation.
Man, we could continue like
I
this
know.
forever, but we have some sort
I'm
of
like,
time limit. You know?
I
I'm trying
understand.
to like download all of it, and it's just there's so much packed into everything that you've said so far.
But
So
thanks so much for this time, because I don't have frequent opportunities to share on this level, so it's like I just feel like a big release, of mental space that is getting air. So thank you
mm.
for
Well,
giving me this opportunity.
before we release you of that release, I do have one last question. I know we're running out of
Yeah,
time.
sure.
So my question is, what is your definition, or if you could put to words the word transcendence, like what does transcendence mean to you, and how like, why should we care about that word? What does that mean for us? And
Well, it's a great word. I don't know if you've ever heard of Houston Smith. He was a professor at Berkeley, and he wrote several books on religion, and um, just wonderful guy. And one of the things he wrote about is he says that one of the most important things for a human being while they're in a body, their soul in a body, is a transcendent experience. And then he also said one of the most rare are transcendent experiences. So he was saying that we need experiences that take us out of the mundane. Like if we a non-transcendent experience is just like, it's all laundry, it's all paying bills, it's all this repetitive experience, which just gets draining and heavy. So I would define a transcendent experience is when you move into a larger aspect of yourself, and you move in closer to the oneness, that eternal aspect, and it influences you, affects you, and then when you go back into your mundane experience, you're still influenced by that transcendent experience. And the transcendent experience, it's a huge difference to think this is all I am, versus, what, I'm a soul. I'm a soul having an experience in a body. I'm not just this body. That my body is going to die, but there's something eternal. There's been an existence before this birth, and there's an existence after death. I think a transcendent experience invites somebody into that. And then, some people have gotten transcendent experiences through hallucinogens or sacred plants or LSD, things like that. I prefer people try meditation or hypnosis work first. I just think that it's still a substance being given to you. It's still something outside of yourself. I just like people to realize you don't need a substance. It's in you. Now, of course, for some people that trance work is hard, they'll gravitate towards wanting to try hallucinogens or psychedelics, then that they've at least tried to see if they can access these transcendence naturally within their own self.
you gave me chills.
Peter, before you go, tell listeners where to find you, what you're up to,
Sure.
what's like if they want to connect with you or to connect with your group of community, or where they can go. And
it's all on my website, peterwoodbury.com. I've just finished kind of my spring, my winter and spring kind of offerings, and so I'm creating summer and fall offerings. So probably the next week or two it'll be up. But it's peterwoodbury.com. And I also lead tours. I go to Egypt almost every year. I've been going to Egypt since I was 6 years old. And then I'm going to Israel too. So people, if they were interested in going on a tour, they're all spiritually based tours. We rent out the pyramid, we do an initiation in the Great Pyramid. In Israel, we're just going to experience the Christ's teachings in a broader way, not just through Christianity. for what we've been told is Christianity.
And
Oh.
when is that next tour date set for?
The one to Israel leaves October 26th, and then it connects to, it ends the, let's say there's an extension, so it ends around the 7th of November, and then the 8th through the 20th is Egypt of November.
Wow. Who knows?
Awesome.
Maybe we should do special reportage. This is source from with you from there, right?
That'd be
We'll
great.
just tell our wives, like, hun, it's work. We got to do this. You know,
It's tax deductible.
work is calling. What can we do? Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're
This
very
has been
welcome.
incredible.
Anytime. I
So,
loved it. I hope
really
to see you guys
appreciate it.
again.
Sounds great. We do too. See you soon.
See you soon. Thanks.